Tom has brought a team with him this evening. Roger Neuschwander, FAIA, President and Principal of Thomson, Ventulett and Steinbach. Ray Hoover, also FAIA, Managing Principal. Roger will introduce the firm. Tom will present the work, the practice, and Ray will give us a glimpse of the future. I've had a preview, I must say. I mean, this is a future more filled with science fiction than I ever imagined. I'm told they've edited it slightly, so you will not see all that I've seen. But anyway, Roger received his bachelor's degree from Ball State in 1973 and his MBA from Wharton, Graduate School of Business at Penn in 1976. Ray graduated from Georgia Tech in 1972 and spent his career at TVNS sharing with Tom the development of an elegant and distinctive design culture that's consistently marked the work of the practice. And to our celebrant this evening, Thomas W. Ventulett III. Tom's degree came in 1957, and then he went on to Penn to do a master's in 1961. He began his career working with German Sano, and in 1968, along with Bill Thompson and Ray Steinbach, started their own firm. He was named a fellow in 1977 and received numerous awards, the AI Chapter Leadership Award, the Urban Land Institute Frank Carter Community Achievement Award, and in 2007, the Georgia AIA Bernard B. Rothschild Award in recognition of the most distinguished service to the profession. Tom is also a recipient of the Philip Trammell Schatze Award from this college. He's always been a dear friend of the college. It's through his generosity that the first endowed chair was named, the Thomas W. Ventulett III Distinguished Chair in Architectural Design. And just last year, Tom taught a watercolor class to the undergraduates, and they're demanding more. And Tom's watercolors are also in the exhibition that we'll visit later. From the beginning, Tom was a designer. His was the formative imagination that gave the work of the practice the exceptional high level of elegance and intelligence over all these years. I came to the city first in 1978 and was taken to dinner at the Omni before it was overwhelmed by CNN. This was an exceptional piece of urban theater, a stage that gave one the sense of being at the heart of a great city, even though it was almost nowhere in the city. Hotels and offices, surrounding gardens, terraces, skating rinks, the smartest fashion stores from London and Paris, elegant restaurants, and even the Rizzoli bookstore. This was not only brilliant urban architecture, but somehow uniquely Atlanta. I was thrilled, and it was this that drew me to this city. It's a great pleasure to welcome Tom and his colleagues with us this evening.
Beautifully done, Alan. I love that. It's wonderful. Matter of fact, you took a lot of the commentary I was going to take, so you've made my presentation too. So I am really happy to be here, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to introduce Mr. Ventulett, or Tom Ventulett. But I'm really happy to be here because it feels like coming home. I'm not a graduate of Georgia Tech, but I'm always welcome here, and it feels very good. So before our distinguished alumnus joins us, he asked me to take a few minutes and talk about Thompson, Ventulett, Steinbach & Associate, the firm that he co-founded, and I'm happy to do that. I should be able to do a very good job, or a pretty good job, because I've been there 35 years of the 40. And you may ask why. In a few minutes, I hope I can answer that for you, so we'll come back to that. But before I step into the Thompson Ventulett presentation, I want to mention something to you. Tom came by. This is an important evening for Tom, and he was kind of stirred up and ready to go. And he came by and wanted to know how I was doing on getting my prep comments put together. And so I told him that I was in good shape. I was pretty ready. And somehow that just did not make him feel real comfortable. So I moved him to cue cards. It's the same stuff, just different format, okay? All right. Let's do a quick history lesson. Thomson, Ventulett, Steinbach was started on January 1, 1968 by, that's 40 years, by the way. That's a big deal. When you measure the performance of firms on the long term, 40 years is a lot of years, and we hope another 40 yet to come. But on day one, it was 3 guys on a back porch. And here we are 40 years later. We're about 275 people, plus or minus, with offices in Atlanta, Chicago, Dubai, or Dubai, and a stake in the ground in Shanghai. We're still trying to make that work. Over time, obviously, the practice moved from a local presence to a regional presence, national, and then now we're serving international markets. And what's really interesting and powerful and good is Tom has been there all 40 years, every step of the way, and he's been instrumental in, obviously, the growth that we've experienced and have enjoyed. Markets, major markets, all firms have markets. In the early years, simplifying it, was basically corporate and commercial office and retail facilities, malls. But over time, education, hospitality, public assembly, which has really served us well and has allowed the firm to expand, and in interiors for not only all our market segments, but a few in addition that are outside of ours. And obviously, Tom will be showing you some images in a moment that will depict that work. Milestones along the way. Atlanta moments in particular, Omni Arena, which Ellen already mentioned. It's gone. Tom was invited to see it imploded, but he chose not to go. Imagine that. Omni International, first project that I worked on, and now CNN Center. And Georgia World Congress Center, phases 1, 2, 3, 4, and hopefully there's 5, 6, and 7, and we'd love to be there for that as well. More recently, Georgia Dome was a joint venturing of other firms in this city, but we're very proud of that facility as well, and then most recently, the Georgia Aquarium. National Design Awards, AIA, has seen that to be something for us, a theme here, 3 times. Philadelphia Convention Center, McCormick Place in Chicago Convention Center, and the Washington, D.C. Convention Center, all national honor awards. But the most special moment, I think, for all of us, when you talk about the collective soul of the organization, that means all our employees, all our consultants, all our clients, all our friends, all our family came in 2002 when the firm was identified by the American Institute of Architects with the Architecture Firm Award for Distinguished Design. We were the 39th recipient of that award. But in addition, what I think makes it special for us as well, it was the first time, I've been told this, I don't think it's folklore, but I'll say it because it feels good to say it, first firm below the Mason-Dixon line to be recognized with that award. Culture, like most firms, they have one. In our case, we have a mission statement, we have a vision statement. We embrace design excellence, we embrace change, we embrace business stability and so on, and we won't dig into that. But since all firms have those things, then what do I think makes this firm or our firm special? And it's very simple for me. It's the people that are part of this organization. The firm was founded on a very simple premise, and that was placing importance on its people and the commitment that they make to each other. And Tom has embraced that commitment for 40 years, as well as the founding principles from day one. He commits to people, and they commit to him. It comes very easy for him. It's a natural thing, and we all enjoy working that way. If there's anything we do know about our organization in the context of people or the commitment we make to each other is, and we discovered this when we were going for putting our materials together for the Architecture Firm Award, is if there's anything we know about our firm, all our work, I mean everything we do, is accomplished through the hands of many. There's no one singular person, there's no one singular event, there's no one item or approach. It is, you can't go it alone, I guess is what I'm saying at TVS. We expect collaboration, and it's how we do our best work. And of course, one last thing, what's a firm without core values? And we have 3 that are very special, and we live by them every day. The first core value is integrity. Be fair, be real. Second, honesty, tell the truth. And the third is respect, treat others with high regard. And I use that, I think, as a pretty good segue here tonight as relates to my opportunity to introduce Mr. Ventulett, who happens to go by Thomas W. Ventulett III, FIA sometimes. And then sometimes it's Tom Ventulett, and then sometimes it's TV. And then he's taught us all very well, if you can't remember someone's name, just call him Sport. So it's a little bit of an inside joke, but I'm going to introduce Sport here in a minute. But some hard facts, which you already knew. He's a graduate of this fine institution in 1957, got his bachelor's in 58, master's of architecture at Penn in 61. Louis Kahn studio. That had to be special. I wish I could have done that myself. We already mentioned he was elevated to fellowship in 77. Numerous awards. The Philip Trammell Schutze Award was already mentioned. He serves on the Board of Trustees for the Georgia Institute of Technology Foundation. You want me to speed up? You don't want me to talk about you anymore? Anyway, but let me tell you about the Tom I know, and I want to go back to the core values. When it comes to integrity, I don't know anybody that's more fair, more real, more honest, more straightforward. This is a man that is not a phony bone in his body. When you talk about honesty, tell the truth, he's always up front. It has served us well. There are no hidden agendas. Clients love working with him because he's going to tell you how it is. He's not going to tell you what he thinks you want to hear or what he wants you to hear. He's going to tell you the truth. You can trust him, and he always tells the truth. Respect. Treat others with high regard. He treats everyone with respect, and obviously he values the person first, and that is important to us. And then for good measures, he's extremely talented. He can paint, he can draw, he can present, and he can hum a pretty good tune occasionally. How are we doing, Tom? And he has passion. He loves his firm, and he loves his profession, and he loves what he does. He's positive, he has an outlook, he's realistic, he's open to new ideas, and on top of it all, people like to work with him, including me. So by now, I think you can tell I have great admiration for Tom, and so we'll be back to the question, is 35 years, why would you do that? Well, when you have leaders like Tom who become not only your mentors and your teachers, but your business partners, it's easy to make a commitment for 35 years. Why wouldn't you make a commitment? And I'm very pleased to be able to say that I've been able to do that. So, to take it from here, I want to thank Tom for two things. One, I want to thank him for asking me to make this introduction tonight, and I also want to thank him for preparing these notes for me to read tonight. Tom Ventulett.
Wow, where to begin? Nice crowd. A lot of faces I recognize, about half of them from the office. Roger offered to give them a day off if they would, well, I tried to persuade him anyway to give them a day off if they'd come, for fear we wouldn't have anybody here. But I'd first like to acknowledge my partner and very dear friend Ray Steinbach and his wife right there. And I have to say, all these things that Roger talked about would not have been even close to being possible without Ray and his absolute diligence, determination, to make the firm as good as it could possibly be, because he hired everybody. And, you know, right behind me, he was always hiring people better than me, and I was always running, so it makes a big difference. So if I had any advice for students, always surround yourself with people better than you are. It'll make you look good. But last year was my 50th class reunion. That's a long time ago. And so people are always asking me, are you retired? And I say, no, just tired. And yet, you know, I'm still drifting in and out of the office because those people are too hard to give up. But going back to what Ellen asked me to talk about for just a minute was school. And, you know, this auditorium has not changed that much. It had wood on the walls, but it was like a wood wallpaper. It was the thinnest veneer that you ever saw, the fact that it could turn around those little curved edges. But there's so much about this building that we all lived in, almost slept in, that it never gets out of your soul. And I can remember working on my thesis, and the fifth year thesis was on the top fifth floor. And if you've noticed, there's a little overhang out there on that side. I'm never quite sure why we put overhangs on the north side of the building, but I think it was to wash the windows. And sure enough, somebody got out a window and went creeping along under the windowsill and came up next to one of the guys working on his thesis and put his face and his hands right up against the glass at night. And you can imagine the reaction of that poor guy with the ink in his hands when he looked up and saw 5 stories up his face in the window. But my thesis, why I took that thesis, I don't know. It was a prison. What a terrible thing for an architect to do was a prison. In those days, a prison was all about rehabilitation. And I thought, well, you know, design a prison so these prisoners get rehabbed, right? And so spent a quarter doing research, my dear wife helping me with my research. And I went out to the federal prison here, and I went up to the Buford Rock Quarry prison. That's where prisoners spent their day breaking granite stone for curbs in the city. And it was so bad up there that all of them at one time, they're out there in the field breaking granite, they all broke their legs at the same time with a sledgehammer. And that got the press's attention. Well, it was more attention than you can imagine, because when I went up there, and I saw how terrible that facility was, it had a really incredible impact on me, on the design from one side, but primarily it said, you do not ever want to go to prison. That stuck with me very well. But it also said, you know, when you design a prison, you can make it a whole lot better than that. Well, I got accused. Some of you may remember Jim Edwards. Jim Edwards would always look at your problem when he was on the jury and he said, my God, you're not serious. Well, he said, my God, Ventulett looks like a country club. So I passed anyway. Now, I was very blessed to come to Tech because I had an uncle that said if I'd go to Georgia Tech and study architecture, he'd pay my way. And he did, and in my 4th year with his consent, he said he would still pay my way because I had become passionate about architecture, but I also was passionate about my young high school sweetheart that was at Florida State, and that was a long journey to have to commute. And so we got married our senior year, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me, and just a couple of years ago we celebrated our 50th anniversary. So we finished school. I feel like everything I did, we did together, and got out of here, went into the Army, and went back to Florida, Coral Gables, where both our parents were, and Joe Smith was there, and he gave me a job. You know, I've even rehearsed this in my mind or in my thoughts. I didn't think I'd have trouble with it. He was a mentor to so many people. He was a mentor to me intellectually, spiritually, morally. He was also a mentor of ethics, his art, his architecture. And you know, I never was as good as he was in any category. I'm sorry. Ray and I started out at TAW, Toombs, Emerson, and Wells. I spent 7 years there. I think Ray was there probably a little longer. Bill Thompson came to Atlanta looking for a couple of guys to help him open an office in Atlanta. And the three of us really made a complementary set. Bill had a practice that made money. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to make as much money as he possibly could. And but what he needed and he couldn't get in Macon was some design talent, get people there. So Ray and I got in there and we set up in a way so that we complemented each other's capabilities and our interests, so that Bill was in charge of the money, I got to be in charge of the design, and Ray got to be in charge of the design technology. And then we all drifted off into other little areas and so on, but we were basically the final word in each of those categories, and it worked. And we also put a policy that said any policy decisions had to be unanimous. That kept you from ever ganging up on one another. You couldn't have two against one, and it really worked. So it worked for many, many years. I kind of drifted into marketing. Ray really drifted into intern development, teaching people, and he really made a great life out of it and a great start for the firm. So the first year we started, we didn't have hardly anything to do except Bill had about 5 jobs that he thought we could do, and all of them cratered except one. And Ray and I worked on that job for the first year, and after that, we didn't know what we were going to do, but it took a year before anybody has faith in you enough to come give you some work. They want to know if you're going to survive, and sure enough, there was one man named Chris Humphreys who worked for Hardin Construction Company, and he had worked with us before, and he thought we were all right, and he convinced that man back there, Billy Mitchell, to come and give us a little little professional building. I think that building was probably about 2,000 square feet or something like that. And we got through that very well. And so then they come back to do this building. Now you can turn the lights out. And I'll whiz through these things. Came back to do this little Gulf Oil building, and it was more than a little building. And from a freehand sketch, Chris Humphreys guaranteed a price. Our budget, I think, was about $14.10 a square foot for construction. And, you know, I put that 10 cents in there because if you didn't hit it on the mark, you know, he was all upset because he couldn't compete with the rent. So the price of the construction related to the rent price, and sure enough, we came in there and got it right in budget, and you got a neat building. Now, let's see, I'm supposed to...
Silver.
Who what?
Silver button.
I said silver button. What? It went? It changed? It changed. So it goes beyond that. The next thing Billy's got us doing a high-rise building in Charlotte, North Carolina. There's NCNB, a.k.a. Nations Bank, a.k.a. Bank of America. Trammell Crow with Jimmy Caswell. We did a building out in St. Louis. This was $22 a foot, I think, wasn't it, Billy? Close? What do you mean? All right, what, do I point it at that thing? Go with that one, all right. I'll go with that one. Well, this was the next really big breakthrough for us because Chris again convinced Tom Cousins that we could come in here and build this arena. For his budget, I think, was $7 million. They were building one in New Jersey for $30 million. I don't know where we were supposed to fit in between. We got it done, though, for $11 million, but it was quite a significant milestone. Too much, all right? I'll get this gadget right in just 1 second, and we'll, all right. Amazing space, but there's a milestone also for the steel industry. There's a whole new accuracy level of putting steel together when they had to put this building together. Spatially, it was really confounding. Chris had an idea of a flat ceiling roof in there that finally didn't work, and so that's what lifted the price a little bit. But nevertheless, when you came in at this level, at the top, up here, and the seating bowl was on the diagonal axis of this thing, the spatial impact was really considerable. I got it. Okay. Boy, that's a grainy slide, isn't it? So Tom Cousins also felt like he had to have something to complement this. Hotels, office buildings, and so on. And so then came Omni International, called International because it's going to have an international trade pavilion inside that. It ultimately became CNN Center. Had an ice rink in here, and instead of putting the roof right along here, we decided to put the roof way up there. And so we had this giant enclosed space and a hotel that didn't have a name, so they created the Omni Hotel. This was the first Omni Hotel. I got it. This represents almost 40 years of history of that area because this whole area was nothing but a railroad gulch. It had the city incinerator sitting right here. It had a cement plant sitting right here, and it had the railroad tracks coming through here and back this way. So the site was almost unbuildable, it looked like. And Tom Cousins had to have something on that air rights. He bought the air rights very cheap. I won't tell you how cheap. Oh, well, I think it was about $1.75 a square foot for all of these air rights. And that doesn't include some of the other property that was right up at 5 Points. Nevertheless, he had about 60 days to have something under construction, and he built that parking structure right there. That parking structure became the impetus, really, for everything else. It was parking for the arena. It became parking for Omni International. It became parking for the first phases of Georgia World Congress Center, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't until the dome that they built some additional parking over here. But look at what has happened. It's remarkable. The Omni is gone. New arena was split there. 4 phases of the Congress Center, the Georgia Dome, Georgia International Plaza, Billy Payne's vision, to put that park there. We got the Centennial Olympic Park, another hotel. We got other things under construction. We got the aquarium. We now have the World of Coca-Cola, and now we're going to have the Center for Human Civil Rights right down here in this corner. It's an amazing thing that's happened over this period of time. More amazing, however, is that this firm has been involved in so many of these all the way through here. I can't tell you how important it is to have people come back to you after you've succeeded. Did I get all skip all the way to there? Okay. Did I pass something? Wow. Yeah. Okay. Quickly then, Congress Center, right here, now CNN, new arena. The interior of the Congress Center, if you see a common thread through here, I hope you do, it's the search for space and light, the quality of light, the quality of space. The design, the images, all of these things change, but those qualities seem to run through. The slides don't always say that. Slides can't, but when you walk through these buildings, that's the kind of thing that I feel and always look for. All right, there it is. Whether it be public space like this and real gathering space, I mean, it's the kind of movement that goes through this that makes it the delight. Or a very personal space, it's also just adjacent to this. And then along Northside Drive, here's Jay Thompson's building. I say that for his son's benefit, who's sitting right next to him. The concourse became a consistent ingredient that we put in almost every convention center. The concourse becomes that real public space. Before we got involved with convention centers, architects were building these great spaces for the exhibits. Big, long span spaces. They were expensive, and we didn't have the money to do that. But we found, it's this space. It's the movement through. It's the interaction that occurs. It's the daylight that you can get in there. It's the ability to see out and see where you are. It's all those good things that happen. And this thesis has continued just virtually through every one that we have done. It's nothing like having daylight inside a building that just generally doesn't like daylight, and that's the exhibit hall. But when you do it here, it really makes a big difference. So, boy, I'm very sorry. I'll get used to this thing in a minute. All right. The thing that excites me about this facade is it's a new facade to the whole west side of downtown Atlanta. I don't know if you can hardly remember what was there, but all of a sudden Northside Drive takes on a whole new complexion. And the Georgia Dome that we did, I just point out these colors that were on the Georgia Dome at that time. That's all changed. Go back. I think that's where I'm supposed to be. South end of the concourse. Another urban room, making spaces. It's not just spaces inside, it's spaces outside. And just feel the movement of this space and how it changes as the light moves through the day. Compared to the exhibit hall, which is architecturally is anonymous. It's a non-architectural space. It's an area, but it changes weekly with exhibits that run through it. And then along comes Arthur Blank, and he wants to fix up the dome. And lo and behold, after all these years, all the way back to '92, we get to all of a sudden change the color of the outside of the dome. What a delight. So these are the new colors, and it all faces the Georgia International Plaza. There are the old colors. It was a time when the state did not want the dome identified with the Falcons necessarily. But after all, the Falcons is the primary tenant, and so now it looks like a place for the Falcons. And the structure done by Weidlinger, it's one of the most fascinating structures that I've been involved with. watching this go together, these 90-foot pipes. I came in one day and I was in here and ran into the fellow and he wanted to know what I was doing up there, and I told him, and I said, what do you do? And he said, well, I paint these. And I said, what do you mean you paint them? He said, yeah, I've painted every one of these. He had a little rig that just went up and down that thing. And he was so delighted and said, and they pay me for it. But I'll tell you, I mean, look at that guy right there. This is an amazing thing. And having a translucent roof to let light in, I think is part of that. And after the Olympics, we had to go back and bring all the interested parties and sort of put that all into context with what's going to happen and look at Billy Payne's vision of what's going to happen with that. And Georgia International Plaza had come out of the Olympics. You can see the railroad comes right through there. What you can't see is the railroad that goes under CNN. And so we were trying to get rid of that railroad. And so this is another of Jay Thompson's with SWA. Really nice changes, sitting on top of an 8-level parking deck, and changed that right away. And the great yellow wall that goes, boy, that is yellow in that slide. It takes the sunlight and the wall, and that light bounces off that wall all the way down through 8 levels and really lights up the parking deck and tells you where the stairs and the elevator is. I had to pose for that for damn, I don't look the same. You think about the great photo ops that's on this site, and I don't ever see anybody hustling around these towers to have their photo taken. They all gather around my statue right here. And what a wonderful thing at night, when light for security really becomes decorative light. It doesn't say this is an unsafe place. This is a joyous place. And when you get a place like this, I mean, thank heavens for Billy Payne and all that he did to get that property to do this. It's becoming more and more a great focus for downtown. We didn't have anything to do with this, just some of the stuff around it, like this. We had a great team of guys with this. I tell you what, this was back in 2002 when we got this project, and I was going through some cancer surgery, and we get the firm award, we get this commission, and I didn't have a thing to do with this building. Just got a really nice opportunity to watch it happen. And the folks did a wonderful job. And Beth and I had our 50th anniversary in here, which was a wonderful thing. And these beluga whales came right up to that window, and they lined up 3 of them and watched the entertainment that we had. I think the people were much more interested in the beluga whales than our entertainment. I can't blame them. It was really a delight. If you hadn't been there, you got to do that. Retail, we're doing retail all around the country. Tom Porter and his crowd, and Mark Carter and Hank Spiker. This is just a redo of one that we had done about 30 years ago, Cumberland Mall. We've got a great hotel group, and this is in Buckhead. This is out in California, in San Diego. And there comes a time when context is so important that you really don't want to step too far out of that, even though you're in the 21st century. So here's Biltmore House over here. And on the property, we did the Biltmore Hotel. Scott Sickler and this group did a wonderful job with that. Mr. Hoover and his team with the 400, 285 iconic towers that are there. And I guess it was the traffic guy that dubbed them the king and queen. Originally, both towers were supposed to have that kind of dome. That's what the client wanted, and we said, no, please not do that. He said, oh, no, I want to do that. His marketing folks said, okay, you shouldn't do that. They ought to be different. But I've often wondered what they would be called if they were both. I see a lot of answers, but nobody's piping up. I mentioned that one time before, and Ann Clough, Dr. Clough's wife, said, the Dolly Parton buildings. A few in-town buildings, Bell South, now AT&T, Proscenium was with Trammell Crow. This, by the way, was with Billy back there, Carter. Billy again, over here with Campanile, that was Bell South. I don't know what they call it now, just Campanile, right, Billy? Been working in Charlotte over and over and over again. This was, at one time, what was it? Jefferson First Union, then it's First Union, Wachovia, now I think it's Wells Fargo. This is UPS. Employee-owned and really a family-oriented, embracing kind of vernacular there. Don't cut any trees, and we don't need to be tall. The interior is very, very hospitable and very friendly. Recently out at the CDC, library, museum, little museum, visitor center, conference center, along with their offices. This is the conference center and the library. You ought to go out there and go in that visitor center. This is quite a structure. It's lovely. Getting back to our offices and some of the other office buildings we've done, this was the master plan. Can you imagine? This is where our office is right now. That's this building. That was the smallest of the group, and of course the only one that was built so often as it happens. And our office interiors, we have an incredible interior staff. I tell you, they make our offices so pleasant, but they make everything that they do, and for the economy that they do it in is absolutely remarkable. But it is the space that you live in, that you touch and you feel every day, and it's very, very gratifying. Our consultant, who's in case, their offices that they just moved into in the last month. West Wayne, which is an advertising company. Showrooms, doing more and more of the showrooms. This is Kimball in Chicago. This is Interface. It's right around the corner here at Technology Square. Love this, using these old 50s furniture. Isn't it wonderful that they're still as good as they are? And we even get pulled into some of our good friends' buildings and create something inside of that, including a restaurant. But the interiors group, I think, just the thing they do, they can get out on that more cutting edge, actually, than you can architecturally, because it's going to change a little bit. You get out on the cutting edge with the architecture, and it kind of scares the client a bit. So you can push them just so far. But this is in Chicago, O'Hare. What a wonderful building this is. What a wonderful palette was already there to work with. Educational work, Perry Dean Rogers, Helen Hatch working on the library over at Agnes Scott, Bo Crum and his wonderful, I think, achievement there at the University of Georgia in the music school. Joel Levy was in here. He said this thing was just wonderful. He loved the acoustics, and everybody said, Joel Levy could hear grass grow. So, Florida Community College, Bob Balkin, his group down there, and finally Tech Square. Tech Square has meant a lot for Georgia Tech, but I also think it has meant an awful lot for the city of Atlanta. It is in it by itself almost, but not totally by itself. It really converted the quality of Midtown. And it hasn't stopped, and it will continue on. Convention centers have taken us all over the world. Long Beach, California, and here again, here's that great promenade or concourse where the outside, the inside, it's always a spatial experience. In Charlotte, North Carolina, Hot Springs, both these last two, Jay has had a lot to do with. Jack Plaxico worked on the one prior to that. Love Hot Springs with its emphasis on art as much as anything too, but this whole the scale of this feels so good compared to some of these really big ones that we've had to work with. Jack Plaxco in Columbia, South Carolina. And just recently, Raleigh. Here it is over here. Fitting these big buildings right into the heart of downtown is a terrible problem often, but that's where they need to be, and that's where they want to be. And that's what happened in Philadelphia. I mean, we had like 6 city blocks in here to fill in. Had an old railroad head house and train shed in here, 100 years old, and that was on the historic registry. So we had to put the convention center in there. So the first phase is this right here, and now we're working on the expansion. So we started working on site analysis and so on back in '82, and we're still working on this building. The shed, it was a magnificent structure, but by the time we actually got to it to work on it, it was leaking so bad, and the roof was beginning to almost cave in except for the structure. It was about to destroy the Reading market that was underneath this. This is where 10 railroad trains could come in side by side, and you can get a 10-car length train. Give you an idea how, you can get shoes for $3. The ballroom was capsuled into that space. And now the addition, which is here, this is an old historic building, they're going to turn into a hotel. This is the building now, and there's City Hall. Down in Orlando, you can tell this one's for the Sunshine State. It's Beau Crum. There's a wonderful section through here. I'm not going to try and explain this, but the images don't quite give it justice, but I love this volume. I mean, it's all about how people move all around, and it entices you to move around and witness the space. I'm trying to change it, go down to Puerto Rico. They wanted their special image, and the image that we found had to do with water and waves. In Washington, you are at Mass Avenue and New York Avenue. This goes right into the White House. You can look over here. Here's our Capitol building. And you compare the size of the Capitol building to the footprint that we had for the Washington Convention Center here at Mount Vernon Square. And ultimately, these two streets had to move through the site. So the problem became to submerge the exhibit hall in the ground so that traffic could drive over the roof of the exhibit hall. So I think we probably got the largest sub-level room in the world, but that's not necessarily something you want to brag about. So we haven't pursued that. But you can lay the Sears Tower down inside this hole that we had to dig. Plus, we had to dig under the street, move the street over and dig underneath that, because that's where the trucks come in underneath the street ultimately. And you had to respect the old Carnegie Library, of course. We wanted the building to be quite transparent, which so many of the government buildings aren't in D.C. And at night, even, they become lanterns on the corner. This is a wonderful building. And a very challenging building. I mean, it's a city of monuments, and yet keeping the scale, human. I'm trying to say Lipsky. I got it, the sculptor that did this over here. You see the kayaks and the tennis rackets and the guitars and the bicycles. Oh yeah, and that one's made out of bar stools. That's right down here. That takes you down to the exhibit hall. You go down and you go down again into the exhibit hall. At the other end, in the center, you go up to an exhibit hall and you get this space here. I think it's setting up for a Baptist convention. I'm not sure what that's for. And this is where the president can come down from the ballroom and, come all the way down the ceremonial stairs. And I love this. So Liz Nicewander, she's so meticulous about this. She works out the carpet pattern so that it works with the riser run ratio so that each riser is articulated just right. And the ballroom, 60,000 square foot ballroom. It's hard to make that personal, but it turns out to be. All right, I'm going to finish up here in just 2 minutes. This is McCormick Place. Dean Mabalakas, who came down here, he was a great help in this expansion. He headed up the team at Epstein that was the architects of record for this. We were the design architects for this and architects with Epstein on this building right here. This is an enormous thing. It's probably, well, I don't know how many, it doesn't matter. This is a big project. Here you're dealing with a city block, and it's fantastic when you have the opportunity to create this kind of space and you can define all of the edges and really make one hell of a wonderful room. And at night, it's just full of light and life. But to give it scale, you can see those taxi cabs. It's an amazing building. It really is. It's the main entrance. We broke the mold on the exhibit hall. We actually put windows in this north side of it. The hotel that we did. This is a proposal for an addition to the hotel, 600 rooms. We actually got wind turbines running up the corners right there and actually up in the top. Interesting that two aspects of the main concourse, the grand concourse right there. It looks like that the roof slopes differently, but it's because the axis of the columns are actually not orthogonal to the space. They're actually repeated as the Chicago grid, which is slightly off from the orthogonal to this room. And so it creates an illusion of a steeper vault on one axis, turn around and go the other way, and it doesn't look the same. I don't know if that's good. But you got to find places to get back to human scale, things that people touch, things that people see, the way light comes in. Fountains, everybody always identifies with fountains. These fountains will shoot about 80 feet in the air up through there. They don't quite touch the ceiling. In the exhibit hall, we tried to give it some animation by putting a kiosk in the middle, but that also serves as a fire exit because the exhibit hall is so broad, you're outside the exit limit, so you got to go below the exhibit hall to get out. It gave us another opportunity. And so this is the new West Addition. And look at all the glass on what normally is considered a solid wall, but we even have a clear story in the exhibit hall that's up here. Sunrise shot. And we have a huge ballroom up here. And we have this wonderful space at the end of the concourse that is transparent in the daylight. The sunlight comes through it from behind it, and it's filled with light at night. There it is there with the super wide lens. Show you what that can be, and the concourse, and the way light comes through there. Just wonderful spaces through here. And I tell you, when they're filled with people, it's amazing. Amazing. It's the outside pre-function space of the ballroom, and that's the ballroom. Now, we started to get abroad, and we won this competition. No, I didn't, not we. Jay probably won the competition, Jay Thompson. And with this monument that we put out there and the master plan for this shore, and this is, do I just hit it again? Oh. This is in Dalian, China. This axis faces North Korea, and I think there was something to that, and this was the result of that. Now what happens? Okay. We do this, Jay. 2003? Is that it? Well, this is about time for me to retire, so I'm going to ask Ray Hoover to come up here and finish up for us and take us into a few of the things that we're doing in the future. And some of it's already done.
Some things have not changed here in a long time. Is that I met in the studios Professor Dowling, and we had sort of an interesting old memory lane, and then many things haven't changed and many things have changed. One story about Tom is that one of the things that the firm was well known for in its infancy when I was at Tech, and Tom Porter and I graduated in the same class in '72, was it was a great place for young people to come and practice and gain responsibility very quickly. And you had a chance to exercise that responsibility rather independently many years in advance of other firms. And I remember one bit of advice that Tom had, because one of those responsibilities is if you designed a project, you had an opportunity, and it was expected of you, even as a kid, to go present it to a client and be persuasive as best you can. And that was a rather intimidating thing to be thrown in there. And my first presentation is that I had written out a bunch of notes. And then as I got to the presentation, and Tom was there to audit it, he says, no notes. Is that we do not use notes when we make client presentations. And I said, well, I don't know if I'm going to remember everything. And his advice, which I think still is true today, is that you know enough that if you don't know the exact answer, make it up, because you'll be close enough. Speak with authority and be confident. So here we go with some confidence. All right. In 1972, when Tom Porter and I joined the firm, how many remember the Brady Bunch? And what is sad is that's the way we dressed back then. And Mr. Brady was an architect. I mean, it took years for our profession to sort of live this down, but it was one step above Mr. Ed. And Mr. Ed was an architect. And I remember one of the early terms of design was, you remember, fine Corinthian leather with Ricardo Montalban. Well, when the firm first was working, is the majority of our work was in Georgia, but when I joined the firm, most of our work was not only in Georgia, but it was Atlanta, but we did have some work in the far hinterlands of North Carolina and in Florida. But a lot has changed since then. From a firm that was much smaller than it is now, there was no women, no minorities, except in some of our resource and support services. And fast forward to now, is of almost 300 people, we have 34 employees that call home somewhere other than in the United States. We speak 33 unique languages. There are 18% that do not use English as their first language. And what is amazing to go between our three offices, when our employees come together and have their own in-house meetings, you hear Arabic, French, German, Spanish, Korean, Japanese, and then about 3 or 4 dialects of English, which I am mastering one right now, I hope. And then, that's a joke. I have this strange combination of North Carolina and Pittsburgh, and that is where I have a confusion in my own identity. 20% of our employees speak more than 2 languages, and some speak 4 and 5 languages. Other stats now, 50% of our employees are women, 27% are minorities, and 16% of our employees are non-U.S. citizens. So even if our work was in those 3 states that we originally started, which it is not, is that we are an international firm. But geographically, we're internationally too. From this small area in 1972 when we were joined, the areas in blue are where we are active now. About 5 years ago, recognizing that we wanted to diversify, and because of our employee base, which was so international, is that our employees were our biggest inspiration in the United States. Us to look beyond. And we first identified Dubai. Dubai had been growing rapidly. It was also a place that was welcoming, and it needed international design talent, and it had a very open business climate, and it welcomed foreign investment as well as foreign business. It has grown so fast, it's hard to believe. This is what Dubai looked like in 1985. It was basically desert. If it wasn't irrigated, it was sandy. And the main road that connects Dubai to the capital of the United Arab Emirates was this dirt road. It was just paved, and there were portions of it about this time that literally were dirt. And some of the old-timers tell that to get from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, you drove in a straight line in a steady path because you were driving across sand, and if you changed your momentum, you were stuck. In 2005, this is what Dubai looks like from the same vantage point, and in now is all of these gaps are filled up with Adrian Smith's world's tallest tower in this location, and it continues to grow now. What you've heard of all sorts of superlatives about the amount of construction that is going on. The Emirate of Dubai is only 1,500 square miles. That's an area of about 35 miles on a side, but there's 25% of the world's tower cranes in that one area. And this is just a small portion of it. The first time I saw it, it looked like that somebody had photoshopped all in one panorama all of this construction that's going on in place. And in fact, what's fantastic to watch this is that we have 3 corporate apartments, and when Lucy and I are in Dubai, that is our apartment right there. And so we can overlook this panoramic drama that unfolds in front of us each time we're there. Well, let's try. Okay. The reason for the phenomenal growth of Dubai is the gentleman on the left, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. Say that a lot of times. But it's his vision. He's Western educated. His father started the vision, and that was he and his father realized that the emirate was very poor compared to the other emirates in the other countries, very poor with oil reserves, and that the secret of the present and the future of Dubai is commerce. And he's also very instrumental in lifting the restriction on outside ownership of property. 85% of the permanent residents in Dubai as well as the UAE are not UAE citizens. They're people that have passports elsewhere in the world, and it is a very cosmopolitan. It literally is the crossroads of the world as far as cultures, values, people, and it's quite intriguing. The gentleman on the right was an individual who ran a think tank, a development think tank for Sheikh Mohammed. It's called the Executive Design Bureaus, Farhan Faraduni, and the think tank's mission was to dream up wonderful types of development concepts that could be of interest to the other developers in Dubai, significant developers. And our first experience in Dubai was being engaged by that individual, and that relationship continues to this day. Farhan was then tapped to run a development company by Sheikh Mohammed and to do the large-scale, high-profile international development quality projects for the Sheikh. Our earliest experiences in Dubai were doing various studies. In fact, much of this international work that you will be seeing here is many of the people that Tom has mentioned, Jay, Howard Chen, who is a graduate of here, and Jack Plaxico and others who are intimately involved in this. But some of our earliest studies by the Executive Design Bureau, the catalyst, the think tank, was to create an auction hall out in the deep desert. The metaphor that we borrowed with the client was Bedouin tents, but also the shapes of sand dunes, is that the metaphor of oasis has been so overused in the Middle East, is that our client was interested in investigating new forms and new images that, again, represented the Middle East, but not falling back on the image of an oasis. But we also, with this client and other clients, we did master plan studies in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Many of them, what was common is that the weather can be rather inhospitable 7 months of the year with temperatures 120 to 130 degrees with high humidity. There's no Arizona dry heat there. And so these projects are all linked by enclosed concourses in order to aid in the pedestrian flow back and forth in the program components in the tough weather. But some of the other work that we were doing was within existing developments or other developments that had been designed and by others is to create these iconic symbols that could be used not only to advance the recognition of the development also, but advance the recognition worldwide of what Dubai is. This looks like an egg that opens and closes, but it's in the middle of a large retail project, retail mall project, in which during the cooler times of the evening or in the winter is that the leaves surrounding the egg could be folded down for amphitheater and for performances during the cool weather hours. But much of our early work was based upon planning, large-scale planning, is that this is Dubai. That is about the full length of Dubai along the edge of the Persian Gulf and extends further into the desert. And you can see once you move off of the developed areas along the Gulf, it gets rather sandy, and the deep desert is not that far away from the Gulf. This is the existing city, but it's also some of the other developments that are planned. You probably heard a lot about the Palm. This is Jumeirah Palm. It has been finished now. It's in use, but under construction. There is another palm that's even larger called the Jebel Ali Palm. And then this is the Dira Palm. The Dira Palm, which is under construction, when it's finished, will in itself accommodate 1.5 million people. And not to be outdone by palms, there now is the world that's under construction, and that is almost finished. And not to be outdone by the world, there is the universe. And then that is the beginning stages. There is nothing in Dubai that is done small scale or humble. But the heart and soul historic spine of Dubai is this little creek which the Sheikh Mohammed's father dredged, turned it into a port at that strategic location at the Straits of Hormuz. It is not that far for these wooden dowels that have been the primary vehicle of transportation in this portion of the Middle East to reach only 80 miles away. Iran, India is not that far away, and Africa is not that far away. And some of our earliest planning studies there, which continue today, is to extend this creek and then eventually with its construction connect it back into the Gulf. Is prime development land in a desert is hard to find, so you actually create it. You can create by new high-profile land in the Gulf or by extending your waterfront internally, and you see other waterfront features are extended there. This is an enlargement of this area there. We were commissioned to do 6 separate new cities within the city. And you saw one, and this one's another one. But the experiment is that if you've heard that Dubai has grown so rapidly, it's being challenged from an infrastructure standpoint. Traffic is terrible. It's getting worse. And then so our experiments in this planning is based upon self-contained cities that live, work, play, does not require commuting. It's an answer to the sprawl that happens there, and all connected by rapid transit. One of those cities is called Business Bay, and is where the creek, this is where the creek was. It is being extended. This has been built. These buildings are under construction. We did the planning for that. But in addition is that we were hired to design a flagship first tower that was being built as an office project, 60-story tower at Business Bay that is very close to the main connector that connects Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and this building with an illuminated face, backlit in the evening with a white frit pattern on it, becomes a welcoming beacon of those that arrive from Abu Dhabi. It is now about ready to be topped out, and it will be finished this year. One of those other projects that we did as one of these 6 cities was called Lagoons. It originally was called the 7 Pearls, and it was comprised of 7 pearls. The 7 is symbolizes the 7 original emirates in the UAE, as well as the pearls were the first industry in the UAE before oil was discovered. And so in addition to doing the planning for these, residential, business, educational, and cultural, we were also asked and commissioned to do the Central Business District. That Central Business District consists of over 30 towers, office towers, hotel towers, apartment towers, condominium towers, the support functions of retail, parking, and services. And of those 30 towers, we designed the 30 towers, and here are a couple of the examples of it. Total square footage is over 40 million square feet, accommodate 30,000 cars. And at the center of it is rapid transit station that links other rapid transit stations as a way to deal with the thousands and thousands of people who call this place home as well as an area to work. But 4 of the 30 towers were to be the new symbol, as our charge from Sheikh Mohammed and our clients, the new symbol of Dubai. And after exploring a multiplicity of different images, is that the image that seemed to work and the metaphor that seemed to work, which is very special to our Arab clients, is the notion of a movement of a candle flame. Is that candle and fire, the center of Bedouin camp life, is to be able to light up the darkness in the desert, became the image that we all agreed on. And these are some of the early schemes, and this is the latest. There are 4 towers, the tallest one 1,800 feet tall. Is that, again, in Dubai, everything is done in superlative. The construction budget for this portion is $7.3 billion. And so some of the technologies that we deal with, our clients, our consultants, actually challenge us to raise our own level of design creativity. Arup is our structural engineer. Werner Solbach out of Germany is our curtain wall consultant. ESD out of Chicago in mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And what has been a challenge for us is that the way design is thought about and the way evaluated. Here, in this auditorium, we were taught form follows function. You start with the function, you craft, you create, you mold. The architectural form is an outgrowth of that in the context of the site. For this work in Dubai, which is very difficult for some of us to deal with, is it turns those conventions on their head. Is that first there is metaphor, then there is sculpture, and then you work like hell to make it work for whatever the function is, whether it's an office building or a hotel. But it does come down, before you can finish the design, there's certain realities that relates to practicality, lease steps, cost, orientation, and things. And what results is that when you layer on those items of practicality on it, you do result with the shapes, with the structure, with different solar buffers. You end up with some rather amazing spaces on the inside. And these are some of the lobby spaces, communal spaces, and other areas that would connect common spaces. The symbol is that the new symbol of Dubai, working with Sheikh Mohammed, is this island was sited, and these 4 towers were sited, so that as you approach the city from the opposite direction of Abu Dhabi, coming from the airport, is that there's the opportunity, as you cross this significant bridge, you have a long view down the creek and through the lagoons, and this is the image you see, a daylight image and an evening image, to give that new symbol of what Dubai can be in the future. Our planning with our Middle Eastern clients, as they expand in their worldwide reach, is that they have taken us with them, fortunately. This is a project in Southeast Asia that we're doing planning on. Planning continues to be a great amount of our work. This one city is comprised of a land area of 2,400 square kilometers out of nothing but just open countryside now along the edge of the sea. A comparison is Manhattan Island is 80 square kilometers. But they also, we do studies around the world with our Mideastern clients, including China, Tunisia, Libya, Jordan, Morocco, and so it's rather stimulating. We opened another front in China a little after we opened the Dubai one. Many of the commissions in China you get through design competitions. International firms are invited to compete for competitions. This is one that we were successful in. This is a convention center and conference center in Beijing. The inspiration for this was the traditional ancient planning norms of feng shui, and based upon a south entrance, a procession going north-south, concentric walls, and secondary axes going east-west. This is the main entrance from the south, and then the main north-south axis where all the common program elements are located. The project was finished in the spring in time enough to accommodate, many different conferences, but also served to support the Beijing Olympics in the summer. Construction goes so quick there. This whole project from the beginning of design until completion was 2 years. In Nanjing, we've just finished another large convention center. Nanjing is the symbol of the city, is a dragon and a tiger. And so that borrows as a metaphor as the curling dragon and the crouching tiger. And is recently finished. We have a team over there now getting to see the results of their handiwork. All of the components are along both an enclosed and an open concourse that link the pieces together. It's an extremely highly flexible space. The conference center can accommodate multiplicity of meetings, conferences, theater, auditorium spaces. The exhibition halls are in 10,000 square meter pieces so that all at the same time meetings can be set up, exhibits can occur, and they can be taken down without disrupting. In India, is that we are been active there for about 2 years. This facility will serve as the core of a new financial district of a very large city in India, comprising of multiplicity of theaters, a convention center, a new corporate headquarters for one of the largest companies in India, as well as a green roof, retail supporting it's over 5 million square feet for this. And site construction has started, and construction will be ongoing until it's finished. The deadline is about 2 years from now. We're asked often, why did we enter into the international marketplace? The international marketplace is something our firm will be committed to ongoing forever. It is very challenging work. It is physically demanding. It takes a lot out of you to get on a plane and go halfway around the world. It used to take us 40 hours to get to China or get to Dubai. Thank you, Delta. It only takes us about half that time or less now. But it is quite stimulating work, and it's exhilarating. Again, remember our employee base. It's so many of our employees are anxious to do work that their own homelands can benefit from. And it is creatively, it's about as demanding and as stimulating as any work that we've encountered. So a wonderful combination of international work and domestic work is something that we hope we can continue to do. And I think that is it. We're going to let Tom wrap it up on some of his most current efforts.
No, I'm basically retired. And what I'm doing now is getting away from the architecture and just doing watercolors. So it's, if I can make this thing go. Anyway, this has been a great experience, great adventure for me all these years, and you can see working with these wonderful people. It's been a thorough delight. And now I'm going through therapy and and enjoying doing the watercolors. So I think that's it. Whoever I should turn this thing back to, Ellen or whatever.
Questions? I've learned this evening that, is it on? Is it on? Yes. Gordon Smith, Joe Smith's son, would like gifts in his honor to be given to the school in Joe's name and in Tom's name. And how that is stated will be in the obituary, but the school is extremely grateful.
Not in my name, in Joe's name. Please.
I agree. Questions? No, I think we're fine. We're fine.
you, Tom, Ray, Roger? I mean, or did he see your work, or did you enter a competition, or how did that begin?
Well, like about anywhere else in the world, our work starts and ends with relationships. And when we first did the exploration, after we identified Dubai would be a great place to prospect, is that we sent a group over there just to figure out the lay of the land. And there was one individual in particular, and as luck would have it, one of the first acquaintances he made was with an Indian gentleman who has become a very dear friend of the firm, who knows everybody. And he introduced us to a young Lebanese architect who was the design director for this executive design bureau. And so we got to know him. We were engaged as almost an experiment by Farhan Faradouni, who was the CEO of this think tank, to design 3 hypothetical studies. That auction hall was one of them. We've got enough to cover our expenses and our time for 1 week. We literally packed up our office, the supplies we need, computers, projectors, and then we worked very closely with Farhan and the director of design and his COO. All 3 of them are architects. And we did some great things together. And it was a heck of a lot of fun. And then as our client was appointed to new, higher, and more prominent positions, is he invited us to go with him to do these planning studies that became the incubator of so much of this current development. And then so other developers came and took notice of us. Again, but it all starts with that relationship.
It's like everything else. If you do something good with one client, it takes you somewhere else every time. It's, the whole history of the firm has been about people coming back like that guy.
I've got to ask you this question. Here in the States, we have to make money off of what you guys design and get built.
That's why he's so
Are you
rich.
admitting, Billy, that you have? So that's great.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. But y'all lost money on every job.
And that's the natural order of things.
How does this work in Dubai? I just can't see enough rent to be charged to give a return on the investment.
It is that Dubai has developed so quickly, it's not a very mature market. Whereas over in the United States, we do market studies. You basically make sure it can work before you commit the investment there. Is that you can see so much of this was done within the last 10 years, and actually in the last 4 and 5 years is where the majority of this development is coming. Is that basically they adopted a concept, if you build it, they will come. But they did have enough of a confidence. There was this huge, and there still is, this huge influx of expats. Again, 85% of the population calls home somewhere else. And then that population increases every year as the expat community to do it. Is what drove this most recent round of investment was 9/11. Is the Arabs had invested so much money into the Western markets, whether it's stock markets, bonds, and real estate. After 9/11, they felt unwelcomed. And so what they did for a period, and still do this, is their petroleum dollars they invested in their own area. This is a lot of Saudi money, UAE money, Kuwaiti money that is in there, and that served as at least the investment. It has grown so rapidly, and the demand has been so rapidly, is that they have been able to fund this with pre-sales. They have been funded with the cost of a 3-bedroom villa 3 years ago was $600,000, pretty high rent. It is now $2.6 million. Our leases, for our office lease and our 3 corporate apartments, you can only get a 1-year lease. You cannot pre-negotiate what your renewal is. There is no such thing as tenant allowance. You have to capitalize your own tenant allowance. If you cannot renew at so-called market rate, you then are required to return those spaces back to the condition you found them. And so rents are just skyrocketing to the point with the construction is that we may be into a bubble. I think we are into a bubble, and this current financial crisis that originated here has spread rapidly around the world. Our clients in the Middle East are convinced that they're partially immune to it because they have petroleum-based dollars. But the world is such a small place, I do think that they will go through a point, Billy, where they're going to have to utilize more conventional market studies and pro formas. But right now is that rising rents have been covering it.
Are you working to, I guess, guide them in that or inform them, or did you know this?
Well, what's interesting is, some of you are old enough to remember the mid-'80s, with, in Texas and other places, this sort of wild west of development. Well, take that about 1,000 or 1,000,000 times over. Dubai is like the wild west of development. It's like shoot first and then aim second. And so it is going rampant. Many of our clients are all Western educated, whether the United States or England. And so they do know, but is that the ruler of Dubai owns virtually all the land until it was bought. And so it's his vision, it's his risk, and he's so committed to it that I think is continue to build, they will come, and when they don't, you stop building. But right now, they have not. But they have gotten to a place now is that there is concern as the total amount of Dubai development that is underway exceeds the gross national product of the whole emirate. And so with the financial crisis, is Abu Dhabi, which is a separate emirate, but it's all part of the same country, they cannot let Dubai risk doing the same thing that other countries have in financial crises. And so they have committed enough petroleum dollars that if they did see a downturn, is that they will shore it up. So, but I do think that currently what's going on in the world it does have an effect all over the world. And we'll see.
Yes, sir. Tom, in your considerable impressive body of work, do you have any project that you would put that most memorable you're finally on for your favorite?
It's funny how you get that question from time to time. It's one project I didn't show, and it's my house. Or my wife's house, I should say. It's the one place that you always come back to, and it's still a delight. So, thank you for the question. There was one other question back in the back, and maybe we ought to call it quits.
I don't want to return back to buying long enough, but given that some almost has, I don't want to say carte blanche, but those emerging markets, such a proving ground for new development ideas and construction techniques, is there some sort of residual feedback loop where some of those new CMS are starting to push back into your domestic work over here, some of the techniques or products side of it, bringing that back?
I think it will. Some of the most exciting parts are some of the people that you work with. You're having to pull together some of the real geniuses in our consulting areas of structure, mechanical, and so on. That's bound to carry with you on other projects domestically. While the Candle Towers are rather extraordinary in their own way, you just can't see their practicality in the States here so much, but when you get down to the details of the curtain wall and so on, it's actually quite exquisite working into those geometries. And I think what Jay's been doing with that actually is getting a lot of interest within the office where originally there wasn't that much interest. So, yeah, it'll come back.
Yeah, what I was going to also add in the way in which design is done is that the expectations on speed, you cannot fathom how quickly those clients want ideas and want to be able to get to market. A lot of their revenue is through pre-sales. And so the use of combination of multimedia, which is astounding. The quality of presentations is just outstanding. It's built into the fees, it's not extra. And so what I think is happening, we're seeing here domestically, is that the expectations and the quality and the speed in which some of this work is developed is now, it will become sort of the norm over here. It is not unusual in some of these early studies is that there would be a sketch, and Howard Chin, who came here, was unbelievably an artist and a magician when it comes to computer. He could take a sketch that any of us do, he would photograph it with just a little digital pocket camera, he would pull that into his computer, he would put third dimension to it, and in 20 minutes would have an animation to fly through from day till dusk and at night.
That sounds dangerous to me.
Yes, and that is, my gosh, I am glad I am 59 years old and I don't have to compete with you guys that do that.
We join across the plaza in the new building to see the opening of the watercolor exhibit and the second installment of the history of the school and hear Bentley's introduction to it. So thank you, Roger.